Going live. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the vSphere YouTube channel. We're going live. We're doing this. We're no fixing it in post. We're going to do it one shot here. I am Bob Plankers. I'm a senior technical marketing architect. I am joined by Pete Keeler. What are you, Pete?
Bob, I ask myself that question every day. Hi, everybody. My name is Pete Keeler. I am in the vSAN technical marketing team, which, of course, as the title implies, focus on all things vSAN. But, of course, since that's all part of that hypervisor, there's always natural overlap there. So that's what I do.
Excellent. And we also have Ken Werneberg.
Hey, Bob.
With a U, not an E, Werneberg. And what are you, Ken?
I'm one of the directors of technical marketing in our cloud platform business unit, a long-term VMware employee. And I cover the vSphere components at this point, but I've covered a few other things such as our HCI group and vSAN and storage, all that. Yeah.
I hear good stuff about that HCI, newfangled HCI thing. You know, maybe my grandkids can tell me about it someday. But no, I've liked vSAN for a long time. But yeah, thanks for joining me here. We've had a big release last Tuesday, a week and a day. We had vSphere 7 Update 2 and vSAN 7 Update 2, which, I'm glad the version numbers have started synchronizing there because it'd be a little awkward otherwise. But I don't know. This whole thing is about that. We've got some folks watching. Thanks for watching out here. I'm watching the live stream. Well, I'm watching the live chat really right now. If you've got questions, comments, thoughts, put them in there. Preferably if they're relevant to what we're talking about. But hey, who am I to judge? And
I just threw my newspaper moment in, like this is live. It really is. This date.
Proof that this is live. Look at that. So there's even a little delay there. We're still fairly new to this whole thing. Like this live streaming again, this newfangled live streaming thing. Get off my lawn sort of thing. But we've been enjoying doing it, and so I thought I'd get these guys together and get the band back together and see if we could yammer on for a little while here, answer some questions and that. But a question that I've got for you guys is, what do you think? So we made a lot of announcements last Tuesday, and features, vSphere and vSAN update releases are all feature packed. We can't remove features or deprecate things in the middle of a major release, but we can sure add things, and on the vSphere side of things, we talk about maybe 20 big improvements, big features, new things. And I've been there's about 90 medium-sized things that got added that we aren't talking about, or you catch, not that we're keeping them a secret, but you catch bits and pieces of them. And then there's hundreds of little cleanups, improvements in that. Out of all of that, and I'd imagine vSAN is kind of the same way, continuous improvement. And not that we have bugs in our products, but bug fixes and things like that. As we learn things, we fix them, Pete, what do you think the biggest thing for vSAN 7 Update 2 is? Is there one defining thing about this update?
Well, Bob, I tell you what, we're right in the same boat, I think, as those who are working on vSphere are in that you have such an assortment of new features, and you're really trying to figure out what's going to be most important for most of our customers. And I think in this release, the standout feature for us are the enhancements to HCI Mesh. And for those that aren't really familiar with what HCI Mesh is, this was a feature introduced in vSAN 7 Update 1, and it allowed you to borrow storage resources from one vSAN cluster over to another. And this was our way of doing this disaggregation, being able to scale compute and storage sort of in a more flexible way. Well, with vSAN 7 Update 2, we've extended this functionality. So now we can use backing vSAN storage as the primary storage for just a traditional vSphere cluster. So now you have this just really such opportunity to create all of these new interesting architectures within an environment. And you can do so really trying to meet some of these needs as the data center changes, because we know that, you can design a data center exactly the way that it should be and execute on that. But then on day
Right.
3, it changes.
Yeah.
And then you need to be able to accommodate for that. So for me, that's the one that really stands out.
That's pretty cool, actually. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking I used to order servers, and then I'd pull most of the drives out, and I'd take a Sharpie and write the serial number on the top of the drive from the host, and then when I needed capacity, I just start adding them back again, to kind of prevent exactly what HCI Mesh can help with now. So, Ken, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask. So for your non vSAN cluster, can you go completely lean on that? Can you go like stateless clusters? You're just booting up and attaching directly over to the HCI Mesh vSAN environment, or how lean can you get?
Yeah, so for the traditional vSAN, or the traditional vSphere cluster that's going to be connecting up to that vSAN cluster, that can just be a standard configuration. These days we generally recommend you have persistent storage for your boot devices for the hypervisor, but beyond that, you can use that as primary storage. And what's really interesting about all of this is that we're doing it using the native vSAN stack, its native protocols. We aren't doing anything like iSCSI or NFS to establish this connection. So it's really lean and efficient and offers just a lot of inherent functionality because of that.
That's pretty cool, actually. Cool. Ken, of all of the vSphere stuff that was announced last week, what do you think? What stands out in your mind as the biggest thing, the most useful thing? What do you like the most?
Yeah, I've kind of gone through this one in my mind back and forth, because there's so much cool stuff that's in there. And like you said, some of it isn't necessarily large, flashy stuff, but I think maybe that goes back to what you were saying about the initial commentary around how we're releasing stuff now. So to me, one of the coolest things is that we are packing this kind of stuff into patch releases and update releases, and our new functionality is coming out faster than ever. And I think this kind of goes towards an agile like sort of a methodology that we're trying to adopt at VMware in general, is getting quicker releases out the door with some of those improvements. So to me, I think it's just the extent of new functionality in the update that's kind of really the most interesting thing to me. Feature wise, and I think this goes to some degree towards what people have been saying forever, as we know, right? Oh, well, you don't ever install the point release. You wait for update 1, you wait for whatever it happens to be. I think that isn't necessarily valid anymore.
It's not been valid for a long time, Yeah,
I agree. I know.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm not going to tell them that they're all wrong, though.
You're all just fine. Keep doing whatever you're doing.
Customer's always right.
Good luck with that, So.
But I think it will help ease some of those adoption, maybe not pain, but some of the friction that people have had around adoption, when you can start saying, look, I can do this more frequently with less massive overhaul of my environment in order to do it. So I like that release vehicle model. Pure functionality wise, it's an interesting one, but I really like the fact that we now have the AVI load balancer integrated.
That's a huge
with this
pain
as well.
Point. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, we have vSphere with Tanzu, which is a Kubernetes distribution basically built into the vSphere stack, and there's tons of information about that. But how do you do the load balancing to distribute IPs and to get different both vSphere and Kubernetes container VMs, the network access that you need? And we have lots of options for that load balancing now, between the AVI integrated pieces, the HA proxy option that we have out there, or NSX itself. So we've got, it's neat. It just gives our customers more flexibility in how they want to integrate it. So I thought that was a big one.
Yeah, no, that's a huge pain point, because, load balancers like that are, well, networking is just hard for a lot of folks to start with. It's a completely foreign concept to most sysadmins, and then figuring all that stuff out, and then trying to deliver apps, and then the idea of load balancing or failing over between them. And it's just, I was really glad to see that get in there. That was a somebody named Scarface. I love it. Scarface, do we have a question and answer later? We've got question and answer now. If you want to put it into the live chat, we will stop what we're doing here and we will answer whatever questions you've got. I know that there were some VMware folks that were talking about coming and trolling us, but if you've got legit questions, let us know. Actually, illegitimate questions too, but keep it appropriate is all I ask.
Oh, yeah, you just get illegitimate answers to your illegitimate questions. That's fine.
Well, garbage in, garbage out, right?
So I think though, in a similar vein to what Ken was mentioning about the integrated load balancers, is that many of our customers, as we constantly ask for feedback from them, they're asking for some of these basic services, this basic functionality built right within the hypervisor, and I think we can see that, of course, with the new native key provider services that are built right within the vSphere. So, and of course, Bob, that's right in your wheelhouse. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you think this is going to play.
What, the native key provider? Yeah. So, we've got VM encryption, vSAN encryption, virtual TPMs. We've had that stuff for quite a while now, and people like it. It's very useful to folks, and it solves problems. But, looking at who's using it, there's a lot of our customers weren't using those things. And so the product management team, the product team went out and asked customers, hey, what's going on with this? Why haven't you turned this on? Why aren't you doing this? And frankly, they said it's not as easy as it could be. And, there's design considerations and all that stuff. And so that's where native key provider came about. Is, what if vSphere could just take care of itself at a basic level there? Is it right for everyone? No, it's not. It's not going to be right for a lot of higher security use cases, or it's not a real KMS. So if you've got a storage array that needs a KMS, or a tape library from my past, not that I'm bitter about it, but a tape library that needed a KMS or whatever, you're not going to be able to point it at vCenter and have it work as a KMS. But for being able to turn on VTPM, which is becoming more and more of a requirement for workloads, and vSAN encryption, for a basic level of encryption there. So I think about SSDs all the time. SSDs are, and I like the word pernicious when describing them. SSDs, because of their over allocation and the wear leveling and all of that stuff, when you zero out an SSD, there's no guarantee that you've zeroed it out, that you've actually erased it. And some of the SSDs have the ATA secure erase command, but many of them say that they have it, but don't actually do it. Or the key, no matter what you do, the encryption key is always like 16 zeros or something like that. Just terrible implementations. This is why they say don't roll your own crypto. It's just terrible implementations of it. And so being able to ensure that everything that's ever been written to an SSD was encrypted such that something else can lose the key, and that data is protected, even if it's underneath a wear leveling algorithm or whatever, that's what I think about. I think about that, and I think about we've also got something ESXi configuration encryption now, because what are boot volumes? You mentioned boot volumes as local storage. You think about like the Dell Boss card or whatever that is, and it's two sticks NVMe whatever there, and mirrored together. Well, that's got the same problem, so if we write our secrets to that, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to erase those. And so we have to destroy the device in order to get rid of it, and that just seems like a shame sometimes, but that's what you got to do. Configuration encryption now will make sure that the secrets are encrypted on that, and so that we can repurpose them. We don't necessarily have to destroy them all the time to move things around. But native key provider, I think, is going to be really cool. It's, like I said, it's not going to be for everyone, but it's going to enable a lot of folks that weren't already doing this stuff to just level up a little bit. Hey, we got some questions out here. Ooh, Ken Drury, he's our product manager. And he's commenting, native key provider is an enabling technology to allow adoption of security features like encryption, VTPM, etc., where an external KMS is impossible or problematic. Exactly, Ken. Thank you. And thanks for joining us. This is cool.
Yeah.
See, we've already got answers to questions.
We've got more answers in the chat than questions at this point. But yeah. So yeah, if you've got stuff, put them out there, folks. We really appreciate you stopping by. So now that we've talked about good stuff in update 2, I don't want to talk about, I love writing blog posts on like the vSphere blog. That's like the 5 worst things about vSphere, because it's like clickbait above and beyond my wildest dreams. And that just seems dishonest, but but it's fun. I'll tell you that. And, what do you think is the biggest potential design consideration or thing that that customers should be aware of as part of what is in vSAN update 2, 7 update 2, or vSphere 7 update 2 here? Mm-hmm. Pete, what do you think?
Well, I'll certainly take things a bit from the vSAN side on that here, but for existing customers, I think when they're looking at making that upgrade, I think it's time well spent to understand if they are prepared to make that leap over to the vSphere lifecycle management functionality that was introduced a few versions ago. It's an extremely powerful new method of host-based lifecycle management for the hypervisor, but it uses a slightly different model. We're really managing things at the cluster level instead of at the discrete host level, and becoming understanding of that before they click on the button that says, "Would you like to, enable lifecycle management?" Which, by the way,
go back easily.
It's a one-way trip on that. So I think that's the first thing that I would recommend. The other bit is, and again, this is really focused kind of on those who are upgrading, is there's a little known capability out on the VMware VCG for vSAN. And it's a notification service that you can sign up for. Frankly, anybody can. It doesn't require a login or anything. And it can provide updates for you on the firmware and the drivers with respect to the version of the hypervisor that you're going to. And it tells you exactly what you need to know in a nice little matrix. It's really a nice feature, and something that, I think if I were still in those shoes, I would be really focusing on as I was making that transition.
Yeah, that's a good point. Firmware is especially important for storage, like little problems crop up to be big issues when you've got weird firmware stuff. So, yeah.
Well, do you remember, you might not, but Pete probably does. There were some controllers that had queue depth of like 3 or something along these lines. And you change the firmware from one version to the next, and all of a sudden you've got a usable queue depth on these things. So staying current on that stuff is super important, especially in an HCI world, right? In a standard environment, it's important, but HCI, where everything is pulled together, man, it's a full stack that you got to manage as one discrete entity, basically.
Well, and everything is software. It's not just, that's hardware. Hardware software. The microcode on the CPUs gets updated. The heck. That's as hardware as it gets, and it's software. So, Ken, what do you think? What if you were a customer? What would you want to think about from a vSphere perspective? Here.
End of general support.
That's a good one.
Getting off of vSphere 5.5. But seriously, actually, just planning upgrades early. And we're doing our part, like Pete is alluding to, with things like VLCM to eliminate some of the difficulty around that. But it doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't plan for your next upgrades. And the upgrades, we introduce such improvements from one version to the next that you really should be planning around how you're going to get your environment to the most up-to-date versions, I should say. I remember talking with somebody in-house who's saying, hey, how do we convince people that we should use this latest version of the software because we've introduced all these bug fixes and patches and speed it up and all the rest of that stuff. but people aren't adopting it. I said, well, they're not just using this one piece of software. Like when I started, we had this thing called ESX, and we had just introduced something called vCenter. It was all pretty exciting. So if you updated, the only thing you really needed to worry about was whether or not your hardware would change or you had a new version of tools, and that was about it. Like everything was very straightforward. But now we've got such a spread of tools, and they're so integrated with the business processes and the application stacks that you really need to be able to plan almost like a business impact assessment in terms of what your upgrade is going to do. So upgrading the software is fairly easy now, but what that means from an application interop perspective, does this affect your Horizon environment? Does your end user desktop have to be taken consideration of? All of those things require a little bit of planning. And I would say that even if you have no intention of upgrading to, I don't know, 7.0 update 2, you should be planning for how you are going to get to 7 update 2, because it's an important upgrade. So getting ahead of those things so that you're not bitten by the long tail suddenly being chopped off is kind of an important one. I'd say that's probably the big one there. And the other thing I just want to plea with people, because somewhere along the line, people have forgotten the apparently tribal knowledge that you should always upgrade your VC to the highest level, not your ESXi servers. It's just astonishing seeing people running like, I've upgraded my ESXi and nothing's working anymore. Well, what's your VC on? Oh, I don't know. I haven't logged onto that thing for 10 years. So.
Yeah, always vCenter first, people. vCenter server always first. You know, and you're right. It's tribal knowledge, and your comment like that makes me think about stuff like, because we've been running into that with security things too. You know, like we've got all this tribal knowledge about isolation and defense in depth and all that stuff, but we don't ever write it down. And I've been trying to do more of that lately, the security configuration guide and things like that, trying to be, I label it as prescriptive, but I'm just trying to actually say it out loud. You know, things that we should be doing, and we all know that we should be doing. I'm not sure that we all do know that we should be doing that. You know, not everyone's a security person. Not everyone thinks like an attacker, you know, and so... along those lines, I really like your approach of the business side of things. I think there's a lot of stuff. Patching and upgrades are a capacity planning problem. They're sometimes an education problem, and and it's not an education problem for the vSphere admins. It's educating the organization that nearly every feature in vSAN and vSphere is designed to mitigate risk in some way. You know, that you can reboot vCenter server without taking down all your workloads. Guaranteed your change managers have no idea that that's true. You know, and so when you file a change, they think that you're just going to take the whole data center down or a whole cluster down or whatever. And, you know, it's just a short conversation about that, or writing that in a change record or change request or whatever goes a long way. But the thing that I was going to say TPMs, trusted platform modules. They're $40, you know, US plus or minus whatever, you know, like, and they're a really inexpensive way to get a lot of advanced security out of ESXi and vSphere in general now. All of the new security features can take advantage of them. They're a secure enclave. So if you've got an iPhone or whatever, you can see every once in a while that, you know, the law enforcement, you'll see a news article about, you know, law enforcement can't get into the secure enclaves in some criminal's iPhone or whatever. And, you know, part of me goes, yes, you know, and the other part of me as well, you know, crime. But, you know, we want that. I want that on my servers. And that's what a TPM is. It's a secure, cryptographically secure spot to store things. But getting back to my other point too, you know, not all of these technologies are right for everyone. You know, if we're storing encryption keys in a TPM on a server for the workloads, if somebody can go and steal the whole server, you know, that might not be the right choice either. So, hey, we've got some questions out here. Excellent. Thanks, folks.
All right.
Let's see. Is there going to be a way to clean up vSAN file services configuration natively through the vSphere client? Pete, any idea? We can't really talk about roadmaps and futures here. You know, from a legal perspective, we have to kind of assume that maybe VMware will never release anything again. Clearly, that's not going to be true, but, you know, we can't really talk about roadmaps and timeframes. So, but given that, Pete, is there any comment about that? Or?
Sure. I think when we first rolled out file services for vSAN, we wanted to make sure that we hit some of the key marks about protocol support and functionality in terms of being able to manage quotas and things of that nature. And then, of course, when we introduced the integration to Active Directory or Kerberos, that's also was very important. What we've recognized, I think, since that time is the desire for many of our customers to try and experiment and then redo everything. And we need to incorporate that better. It's been an ask, and I think it's been a good ask in that we know that one slip up, for instance, of some OU name or something that you're entering in within your Active Directory specifications, maybe you didn't get it right, or maybe you were just trying to learn about the feature a little bit better. So we're really focused on making that interaction via UI and in other ways much easier for our customers.
Very cool. Other questions. What are the challenges in implementing the MFA, the multi-factor authentication in vSphere 7? Ken, do you want that, or should I take that one?
No, you go for it. You're the security guy here.
Excellent.
I'm sure.
I think the main challenges, MFA, it's the feature is called Identity Federation in vSphere 7, and the main challenge is that it needs ADFS right now. The implementation we've got, ADFS is a great starting point because it's an abstraction layer. Honestly, it was perfect to start with because everything can plug into that, and we can just federate with ADFS. ADFS is it's accessible to most people. I shouldn't say everyone, but it's accessible to a lot of our customers because it's just part of Active Directory, and so. But the main challenge is and Ken Drury, he's the vSphere security product manager. You've got a product manager in the live chat right here, so feel free to pick on him. He's a great guy. He loves dad jokes, by the way. They're awful, and this is why we get along. But the main challenge is that ADFS, and we're working on that. But if you want to do it now, you need to stand up an ADFS server for your vCenter environment. And there's a lot of folks that are doing that. They just stand up one single or a pair of ADFS VMs or whatever. There's still the SSO stuff. So if that's not working, you can still get in with the SSO logins and things like that. But I think that's probably the biggest challenge right now is working out how that's going to look right now if you need it, and then what it might look like into the future. So let's see. Other questions. Regarding patching, we had a painful experience as someone changed the proxy setting at a global level. It's not possible anymore to scope that one. Are you saying, I think I've heard about this, where if you set a proxy server, it's hard to, here, I'm trying to find my notes here. The notes. If you set a proxy, that it's hard to change the proxy setting. So I will take a look at that. One of the cool things about the vSphere 7 client, the HTML5 client, please stop using the Flash client. Flash is dead. We're past that as a civilization. Yeah, Ken is laughing. Turns out I discovered there are ways to get it to run still. Not recommended. Anyhow, the top, what is it? The top right, there's a little smiley face. And if you click on that, it's feedback. So if you've got feedback, give it to us. And then it goes to folks like Ken in the chat here. So let's see. Ken is talking integration with external systems, federated identity. Yeah, MFA. The nice thing about the identity federation is that you can actually offload a lot of that to your corporate processes. So, if somebody quits or whatever, Bob in IT operations and the NOC or whatever quits over the weekend, HR will just terminate their account and vSphere admins don't have to worry too much about it. All right. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Oh, it is St. Patrick's Day. Interesting.
Hey.
My kids asked if leprechauns were going to get into the house, and I said, no, I sprayed for them and ants. Thank you, though. But what are two update features with vSphere and vSAN being released with update 2? Ken, what do we have for resources if people are interested in knowing what's in vSAN and vSphere Update 2?
Well, there is, of course, the blog sites that we have around blogs.vmware.com/vSphere, where we have a launch announcement blog. But if you're looking for more technical details on any of these things, we have core.vmware.com as well. And I'll throw this into the chat. But core.vmware.com is a tech zone instance where we have a consolidated set of technical briefings. Sometimes they're tech notes, sometimes they're blogs, sometimes they're demos and videos and click-throughs. And it's really the full set of the foundational technologies that we're providing around VCF, around vSAN, around some of the BCTR tools that we have, and of course, core vSphere itself. So go to core.vmware.com to check out some of the deeper technical features there. You'll notice that we're taking the approach where we want to have deeper technical notes around every individual technology silo. So for getting the overall view of what was released, I think the blogs.vmware.com/vSphere is where you'll find the full perspective, and virtualblocks.com is where we have all the HCI and storage pieces there. Just to answer the question, I think with top 2 features would be difficult. I think to Bob's point earlier, there are so many, little bit of something for pieces everyone to read in there. It's go check it out. So I'll just go on mute and throw in some of these resources.
Oh, cool! Thanks, man. I was also going to say if you wanted to share here something too, we could do that. But the let's see, Varonis integration with vSAN file services. Pete, what are the integration opportunities? I'm assuming Varonis. I know a little bit about Varonis. A friend of mine actually used to work for them in scanning and things like that. What interfaces might there be?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now we have some limitations with integration for file services, primarily around things like AV scanning and all of those good things. However, in vSAN 7 Update 2, we did introduce a new file services snapshotting mechanism. And this is it's a snapshotting mechanism exclusively for file services. And it's also primarily intended for our partners, the ISVs that build the great backup applications that we all know and have used in the past. And so that's going to allow them to be able to provide those, the snapshotting functionality, the backup functionality that you would normally want with file services, being able to get a point-in-time recovery of files on an as-needed basis and so forth.
Cool. Thank you. Let's see. We're getting. Why are we not using LDAP? We always recommend AD. I think Ken actually answered this. LDAP still works. AD over LDAP. AD over LDAP S, please. Please put the S in there. You know, is it SSL? We don't really use SSL anymore. Let's call it secure. But LDAP S, please. AD over LDAP S or Identity Federation are really the two different courses moving forward. Integrated Windows authentication, by the way, was announced. We announced its deprecation as part of vSphere 7, the GA of vSphere 7. So if and when we release a, not talking futures, but the next major version of vSphere will remove IWA, and so there's some good reasons for that. IWA is a blurring of political lines and organizations, and we truly believe that good fences make good neighbors. So AD over LDAP S is a nice bright line in the sand, like a good fence. Identity Federation is a good fence too. So a dual LDAP proxy works pretty well if you don't want to use ADFS. I used to use this. This is not an endorsement of any. Use what works for you, but their LDAP proxy. I know there's somebody else. I don't know if it's Okta or Ping or whatever. There's somebody else that has an LDAP proxy that works pretty well too. They don't like it. Duo didn't like it because you could still get in through SSO, and so they don't want to be blamed if somebody goes around their auth or whatever. But for if you can close that door or make sure that that door stays shut, then the LDAP proxy works really well. So placement controls in U2 for placement of VLCS VMs so they don't land on local data stores. I believe that is a roadmap item. Keith Howells, he's one of our, I don't even know, Tam. So Keith, I think that's a roadmap thing. The VLCS stuff. There's been a lot of feedback about VLCS. And I know the product managers are listening to all of it and taking it in, because VLCS is an important direction for us, helping to Well, and just helping to get, we talked earlier about disaggregation, like vCenter server, why is it so important? Can we make it less important? Can we make the cluster more self-sufficient, and so that's a big part of that strategy.
It's disaggregation, and I'd also say it's federation. What we're doing is distributing the intelligence and the control plane for cluster level settings across the cluster itself, so that it's not all sort of consolidated in one potential point of failure, or also just in one management interface. So this becomes part of the cluster itself to control cluster resources. So very important. And yeah, the anti-affinity is the first important piece there, just to make sure that, again, we're not introducing further issues. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and even parentheses. I mean, people have given us feedback about the parentheses and the names and stuff like that. And so if you've got a thought about it, put it in, I was saying before,
use that client,
use the feedback thing. People read that stuff. It may seem like a black hole, but it isn't actually, and so please use it.
Well, sorry, just to follow up on that too. The nice thing there is that you can then follow up. If you send me an email, yeah, I'll absolutely take it seriously. I'll send it over to the PMs and engineers. But I'm not going to follow up every 5 minutes. Okay, well, the status is now yellow. We've moved along on that thing. We just don't have those mechanisms for doing it. The client does. You can track your own feedback ideas through that portal and see what's happening, and if people are voting on your idea and so forth for that feedback. So please use it. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I
agree. I think too, that feedback is important because, how the question was asked is, are there going to be any placement controls? Well, there may be a variety of different circumstances where it may make sense for that VLCS to land locally and the VLCS to not, and to really accommodate for all of those conditions and figure out what's going to be best for that a given set of circumstances. And giving that feedback immediately will allow us to really better understand the context of that request.
No, that's a really great point. So, Keith, I don't know that we have answered your question, but we certainly have talked about feedback. No, and it was a great segue into the whole feedback thing, because we don't use. The truth of the software industry is we don't really use the software internally like you folks use it out in the real world, and so you need to tell us sometimes what we're doing right. What do you like? What don't you like? How can we make it better? Like if you can give us some hints, help us help you, help us make your life a little easier in that regard. Let's see, more questions. This is great. Wonderful.
Sorry, Bob,
questions.
Just one more thing on the feedback side.
Yeah, go for it.
On core.vmware.com as well, that we've been mentioning here, if you go take a look at any of the articles there, you'll see a few ways that you can also provide feedback. So you can give us a star rating on that material and say, this was awesome, best material ever. And if you see anything written by Bob or Pete or me, then by all means add 5 stars to that. That's very important. But you'll also see there's feedback opportunity there as well. So if you're looking at an article, you can see there's feedback. You can log in. So you can create an account on core.vmware.com. That gives you some benefits. First of all, you can track where you are in articles and revert back to that sort of thing. It also gives you that ability to do feedback and set up customized profiles around how you want to consume that information. But the feedback is very, very important for us in the tech marketing world, because if we've written some long article with awesome demos and we've missed the mark for what you're actually looking for, we're really appreciative to get that feedback as well. So
I've written stuff like that where I've written a long post and the first comment is some basic question I should have answered in the first paragraph, honestly. So yeah, no, I like that. And it's what pains me about, sometimes we have to shut comments off, especially around YouTube videos. We get a lot of spam and a lot of inappropriate links and stuff like that, because
our guy Ken Drury.
Yeah, that Ken Drury guy, and that's what pains me about turning off the comments and things like that. So most of that stuff, if we have the comments off, we've got our email address or some way to find us there. And so please reach out if, we don't bite unless you ask nicely. Is the vSAN file services, does it now support vSAN stretched clusters, Pete?
Yes, it does. vSAN 7 Update 2 will support both vSAN stretch clusters and 2-node topologies. So yeah, you're set.
Cool. How do we install Kali Linux on Windows? I have no idea. I'm guessing it's the Windows Linux subsystem, But I could also say you could put VMware Workstation on your Windows box and do it that way. I use Workstation for lots of stuff, and Workstation's pretty cool. Kali Linux is nice. Could you expand on in a future vSphere release, VMware plans to discontinue support for Windows Session Authentication, Common Access Card, and RSA Secure ID for vCenter Server? Well, this is tied. That's part of the release notes, and it's us warning folks that we're going to deprecate those methods probably in the next version of in the next major version of vSphere. And so it's part of our authentication strategy. Replacing them, there will need to be a replacement. How do we attach common access cards? Common access card is a U.S. Department of Defense is their term for their smart card, ID card. There's 4 different types of ID cards. Don't ask me how I know all this stuff. It's not because of this. I'm actually wanting to go to the Naval Museum in Pensacola in like 3 weeks here. And to get on the base, you need one of the common access cards. And I've got a buddy that's in National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration contractor, and so we're trying to scheme if we can get in there and go see all their planes. But anyhow, I digress.
Did you just say you're trying to scheme for access to a federal building?
Yeah, well, in theory, he can take. So this museum I've heard is just amazing. It's got like all of their aircraft, but it's on the Naval Air Station. And because of COVID, you can't just come in and go there. You have to be a DoD person, but they can escort 2 cars and up to 15 people, as long as all of the people are either kids or have real IDs. So yeah, we're trying to work that out right now. It's been this whole thing. Turns out my wife doesn't have a real ID. I don't know. It's just, anyhow, more than, yes, Pete is laughing, and that's kind of where I'm at too. But anyhow, so right. There will be more to come. Us announcing that we're planning to deprecate something. Deprecation doesn't mean it's unsupported or going away right now. It just means we're planning on replacing it. We're not going to orphan the federal government. Windows Session Authentication probably is going to go away in the form that it's in right now. And there are some good reasons for that. We've been really looking at ransomware too. 1, it's the good fences make good neighbors thing. 2, it's really hard to support browser-based access like that, and we're replacing it with other good single sign-on methods. 3, the idea with ransomware, if somebody's desktop is compromised, do you really want them logging into vCenter Server just automatically, all that sort of stuff? There's some concerns around that. We're really trying to figure out how we can go about making vSphere more ransomware resilient, I believe is the term that Ken came up with. And how do we do that? How do we do it in a way that's not super annoying to our users? And so, and then Secure ID as well. Secure ID will be able to plug that into ADFS and the other Federation stuff that's coming. So, deprecation notices, often a lot of smoke, but no actual flame. We'll have some more news about that as we move forward. Can you clarify, is there a built-in KMS in vCenter now, so you don't have to use something like Gemalto? Ken is responding. He's got a good... He's actually, native key provider effectively acts as a built-in KMS, but it isn't a full KMS. So, it's just for vSphere. So if you need a KMS, like for your storage array or your taper libraries, or for whatever, then you need to go get a KMS. If vCenter can do vSAN encryption, it can handle VM encryption, it can handle VTPM stuff. But beyond that, if your use cases vary, it's not going to be right for everybody, but it'll be a great start for a lot of people. So
since there seems to be a lot of discussion around security, Pete, maybe you could talk a little bit about the data at rest encryption on vSAN and
that'd
how
be
that
great.
Interact with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this really ties back into the fact and the benefit of vSAN being built right in to the hypervisor. So when you think about for any sort of encryption running in the hypervisor, we have the cryptographic modules. And for vSAN, we use those very same modules. So, and therefore that allows us to offer some of those very same encryption services but from a storage perspective, do it in a way that makes sense. So here we have a couple of offerings. One is data at rest encryption, which is just as the name implies, it's encrypting the data at rest on the persistent storage. And then in vSAN 7 Update 1, we introduced data in transit encryption, which is basically going to encrypt all of the data in flight, the vSAN data in flight, the traffic that goes from host over to another host. And what's interesting about that one is that it does not use an external KMS. Those keys are managed by the respective hosts within that vSAN cluster. So we have these fully integrated features that are basically using the same base components that the hypervisor is using for other elements here, that being things like VM encrypt and so forth.
Well, that goes in the don't roll your own crypto category. If we can use the same library for everything, let's use the same library, and it makes compliance better, because we only have to verify and certify one library and things like that. So no, that's pretty cool. The other thing that I really like about vSAN and the data encryption in vSAN is you can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can still use the deduplication and compression features, right? You still get that benefit.
Yeah, that was I think one of the most challenging parts about when you're designing some sort of a storage stack is how can you take advantage of opportunistic space efficiency features while ensuring that level of security through data at rest encryption. And so in our storage stack, as those IOs are traversing down that stack, we go through an encryption and decryption process so that then when we're doing the deduplication aspect of it, that's essentially the last step before the data resides on the persistent storage tier. So we are able to offer some of those benefits of space efficiency while also doing full encryption.
Yeah, that's really cool because, and then because VM encryption, you can turn on VM encryption but not encrypt the VMDKs. You can let vSAN handle all of the VMDKs and all the on-disk stuff. You turn on VM encryption for the VM itself, just for the home files and that. Yeah, you're double encrypting a couple of things. It's not that big of a deal. But then you can turn on the VTPM features and get all that security in your guest as well. So that's pretty slick. Let's see. Where did we let off? Let's see. Thank you. Will the new functions affect the current VCP DCV7 material and or exam? Ken, do you know?
Yeah, it will. Now, do you need more than that? But yeah, it will definitely. Yes. We tend to historically have updated all of our ILTs and especially the certifications and the badges that go with them over the major releases. And I think we basically have to evaluate on an ongoing basis how much has something changed to invalidate the previous one. And usually on the major releases, a fair bit has changed that will invalidate it. Within patch updates and patches and updates and various other mechanisms that we're releasing software with, tends historically not to have required a complete re-roll of that material. With, as I was talking about earlier, a little more functionality coming in on a more regular basis, we're doing more of those evaluations. So we are looking at what do we need to do in order to update that material. No plans in place yet, and it certainly wouldn't invalidate or cause a recert for people who've already passed it. We might update for people that are taking the new courses, but it will. But stay tuned. I'm not sure what the plans are in that space.
Cool. Thanks. Let's see. Interesting discussion. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for all of you. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate the questions and that. It's nice to have a conversation. I had some seed questions to get us started. I'm really glad we actually have real questions. Not that my questions weren't real, but is there any work or overhaul being done to vCenter? All the time. Things like HA and doing work on the actual GUI, being used to Nutanix, using vCenter again for CF install is like going back in time. Ken,
He said the bad word. He said the bad word.
Said the N word here, Nutanix.
No, you said Ken. Anyway,
Oh, Ken. Yeah. So
no, absolutely. And even if you look at U2, for example, we've got new interfaces. I mean, this stuff is going on all the times behind the scenes, but I think a lot of that takes, if you think about how long it took us to get off of Flash, for example, it takes ages to do complete overhauls end to end of this stuff. But we are doing a lot of work in terms of, like we were talking about earlier, federation, UI interfaces. There are entire teams here whose job it is to do nothing other than look at how our software is consumed and, you know, sit you down and do blind testing. I've participated in a lot of that stuff. We are always looking for ideas in terms of ways to improve it. So again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but go back to that client feedback thing. If you see something, you say, man, this feels like navigating an Excel spreadsheet. Let us know that. Hit that feedback button and say, it feels like I'm navigating an Excel sheet. I need to have a more intuitive interface. But we literally will spend a lot of hours sitting there looking at something saying, well, what do we need to float up at this level? We have mobile clients, for example, around things like vSAN and around notification that we're working on for vSphere. And we'll sit down and go through with the development teams and say, okay, at this level, you're surfacing the, I don't know, SCSI path. We don't need that at the top level. What we need is a red, green, yellow sort of thing, or amber, depending on where you live. We need that kind of feedback from you as well. So if you have ideas to improve it, then that's awesome. But yes, there are definitely plans. We can't talk again to futures and development cycles or release dates or anything like that, but it's always in the works, always. People work very hard on that stuff. So.
Yeah, we have a small army of UX designers, user experience designers. And, you know, one of the first things that I did when I joined VMware, I figured out who do I need to talk to in order to fix the sorting in some of these fields, you know, and it was just stuff like that. It's just dumb, simple stuff. It's a select statement in a database, you know, but again, like we said earlier, you know, you folks use the product differently than we use the product. And so things that bug you may not be things that we see. You should not assume that we've seen it or are irritated in the same way you are. Please let us know your level of irritation and we will prioritize accordingly.
I think some of us have been using this so long that we've got Stockholm syndrome with it. It's like, oh, I love the fact that I've been taken hostage by this part.
Yeah,
we don't see it.
Yeah, no, it's just, we're too close to it. Thanks for the discussion. Yeah, thanks for being part of the discussion. I always thought that the stateless host with maybe an iSCSI or Pixie boot with a combination of VDS and host profiles would make for the most efficient platform to host VMs. Thoughts? Yeah, there's dependencies there. You know, that's something that I always worried about when I was doing the stuff out in enterprise IT. Stateless hosts are neat, but when the power goes off, and there's always a dependency you didn't really plan for, and, you know, yeah, finding a way to manage that stuff and make sure that it's all managed in lockstep with each other and that it all looks like it should and it all works is more important than creating the dependencies to try to reduce that. I like the configuration management tools, the desired state stuff that we're doing, the desired state stuff that's in Lifecycle Manager, and so that's what I worry about. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I think you know, when anybody brings up the architectural model of using Pixie for stateless host configurations and booting, I think it reflects the challenges that existed at the time in which those infrastructures were being built. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes at that case, you had these hosts that maybe weren't all that good at maintaining their uptime, but yet you had this really expensive, highly resilient storage array. And we thought, wait a minute, we can boot these hosts off of this storage array. It's going to be fantastic. We don't have to worry about that. And then maybe we can have something like some VDSs there to manage the switching configurations. But the practical reality that we've seen, I think, evolve over the years is the needs and the capabilities of the servers themselves have changed. So we have a lot of cases now where it makes a lot of sense actually to have a persistent local storage for specific purposes, sometimes even just making sure that you can capture the crash dumps on the host, which always exist. But in a stateless case, that's going to be a little bit more challenging. So, Bob, almost to your point, I think I think what we're seeing is focusing on efforts on how to make the management and the lifecycle management of the hosts that comprise a cluster as easy as possible. And there's been a natural evolution away from any sort of stateless host configurations.
Ken, what do you think about all that?
I don't know. I was reading the questions.
Okay. Honest answers. That's why I like you, Ken. The Pete, that's perfect. There's a follow-up question. I'm going to skip a little bit here. Follow-up question. So VMware recommends persistent local storage for ESXi hosts, right? I think so. Yeah.
It recommends is a fair way to put it.
Yeah.
Recommended, yes. It's not that it's the only thing that we support, but it's good for all the reasons that Pete just outlined.
Yeah, we recommend doing what's right for you as much as that's a total cop-out of an answer. If the Pixie boot stuff, it's supported. If it works for you and solves your problems, we recommend you do that. But local storage the local boot volume is a good choice for a lot of folks. So. We're going to implement a large vSAN scale environment. Thank you. Just to be clear, is vSAN a solution to be proposed for capacity reasons, even if we're not getting the desired capacity of customer on 15 nodes? So I think the question here is about capacity versus performance.
Yeah. So actually, this speaks to, I think, when one compares traditional storage, where you're using a 3-tier architecture storage array, they're going, okay, I'm buying this box that has 100 terabytes, and I'm getting 100 terabytes there. But then when I buy vSAN and maybe that cluster has 100 terabytes, it's not factoring it. That's raw capacity, and it's not factoring in the levels of protection. Well, the dirty secret about all of that is that on that storage array, you're actually paying for much more than what the 100 terabytes actually shows. That's the visible storage amount that is presented to you, because it has to protect that data in some form or another as well. And it does it generally on a single kind of a decision point. I'm going to stripe all your data with 2 points of parity everywhere across all of the storage devices in that box. With vSAN, we choose to present the storage raw because we give you that choice on a per object level, or even a per VM or a per VMDK level, so that you can be very prescriptive on that level of protection. Now, we employ those same space efficiency features that a storage array would do, but instead of doing it kind of at the hardware array level, we do it at the object level. So it gives you that functionality and features. So when you combined, the deterministic space efficiency found in RAID 5, RAID 6 in vSAN, along with some of the opportunistic space efficiency features, I think you'll find that they're actually very comparable at the end of the day.
Cool. Yeah, you touched on something that's a really key difference between vSAN and a traditional array, traditional storage, which is that vSAN really applies those controls at the object level. And a VM is an object. Actually, a VM is a collection of objects. Mm-hmm. Each file is an object. Each VMDK is an object. And so you've got really granular control. Like my lab environment, I've got one large VM that I've chosen a different protection policy for the large VMDKs attached to it than the home files and the boot volume, for example. And that flexibility is huge. Let's see. Because of the recent issues with SolarWinds, we had to move to Microsoft SCOM. Does the update 2 have any sort of integration with SCOM for monitoring the environment? I don't know. That's more of a VROPS thing. Ken, what do you think about that?
I'm sorry, I was writing responses to some of the
Oh, okay.
questions there for technical stuff. What it was around
Do we know
SCOM? Is this a SCOM
SCOM
question?
integration with vSphere?
I haven't seen anything around update 2 with any integration points there. I would argue that that should be the reverse direction, though. Wouldn't that be more a question
Possibly.
around what SCOM has in terms of pointing at our APIs?
Yeah, I just thought maybe. Pete, do you know of anything offhand?
No, I don't.
So sorry, man. We're treading into areas where we're not as well versed. But yeah, I agree that the Microsoft folks, there's probably something that does it. I don't know if it's built into SCOM or not at this point. I'm
Yeah,
sorry about that.
the other option, like you said, would maybe be vRealize Operations might have some plugins on that.
Yeah,
But I haven't seen that at least recently.
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
Quick to the Google.
To the Googles. What vSAN versus Nutanix resources can you recommend to help build technical and business cases to move off of Nutanix, thank you, and towards vSAN, thank you, as the HCI solution? I need to sway both engineering and management types.
So
Ken?
Peter, I just threw in the vSAN
Cool.
on core, but
Okay.
I think you could also take a look at the sizing tools and kind of make some decisions based around that. We don't get into that mudslinging sort of thing. Like we don't publish comparisons. Technically, that's against EULAs for people to do that. I know a lot of people don't abide by those, but so I would say just do the sizing for vSAN. That would kind of give you that solution, what it would look like. But Pete probably is, again, closer to this than I am at this point. So if you have any further ideas beyond the technical material we have on core and the sizer, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would just point anybody interested in answering those questions for themselves to the material that we have out on core. That content is a very living content. Folks like Bob and myself and others on the team are always updating that material. And what we really try to do is not get down into the weeds of comparison one versus another, whomever the competitor is. It's really about showcasing why this software that you already know matters and how it can help you in your given environment, and helping you sort of bridge that gap so that you don't have to read the 30,000 word release notes section to try to disseminate it, but really boil it down for you in a functional way. So that would be my advice there for you.
The other thing I would add in is talk to your SE about getting something like a live optics assessment done. And those things
Live
can
optics is
really
cool.
give you the complete end-to-end view of what that solution would look like, including some financial decisions that it could inform. So live optics is a pretty cool tool. Yeah.
Yeah, vSphere, with vSphere, we tend to be very focused on, and VMware in general, very focused on how the solution meets people's needs. We like features too, but those features are a means to an end, right? They're a means to help you get your work done, and get your work done in a way that lets you go home at night and do things with your family or friends, and not have to worry about all this sort of stuff, trying to reduce IT staff load. And so we're very focused on that. And we're trying not to get caught up in the feature by feature sort of comparisons. But the only other thing that I will also say too is efficiency is a big thing. ESXi is a purpose-built hypervisor for virtualization. It's purpose-built. It's very lightweight, and it's very, very efficient. The stat from, what was it, VMworld, not last year, but 2 years ago, where running containers on ESXi was like 11% faster than running them on bare metal Linux. That was not an error. That's not a joke or anything like that. It's because of the efficiency of the platform. And so on the security side, so I do a lot of security and compliance stuff. There's an old storage joke. I used to do storage things as well. The old storage joke is, what's the best kind of IO to do? Well, what's the best kind of IO? The one that you didn't have to do, and adapting that to the security world and just operations in general. What's the best kind of thing to secure? Well, the thing that doesn't exist, right? The thing you don't have to worry about. So if you can drive efficiency there, that's a huge win as well. And so that might be good thing. But I've always loved that Live Optics tool. Ken, thank you for mentioning that. That's a really great tool. If you Google for Live Optics, you can just sign up for it. It's got an agent that you'll just run on your desktop. It'll connect to vCenter, and it'll just sit there and gather performance data for a while. Like you can do it up to a week, I think. And I used to do that all the time when I was a customer. I'd do it for myself to see what the sizing needed to be. What are my I/O patterns, all of that sort of stuff, and it's very helpful. So
I do recommend an SE engagement with that too, though, because they can help put together some of that financial and technological plan that he's looking for.
Yeah, they've got a lot more access to competitive things as well. So. Other questions? Kind of slacking off in the chat box here. We've got a little bit of time. We had planned this for an hour, but the three of us can stick for a little bit if there's anything left.
I'm surprised I've been this circumspect with my usual verbose nature, but now that I got a microphone and a camera on me, I'm willing to talk for another hour. Let's get to keep going.
Yeah, well, eventually I'm going to have to take my kids to karate. So you two can have this.
All right. So let me ask you something, Bob. What are you most excited about that you're seeing in terms of the direction that we're taking? Not necessarily innovation or features or time frames or anything like that, but what's got you kind of keen on what's going on with VMware these days?
The direction, like figuring out how to use everyone. So my past, figuring out. Everyone's like, we're going to go to the cloud, and okay, yeah, that's neat. What does that mean? And VMware is sort of an abstraction layer for the public cloud. Public cloud is very powerful. Just the elasticity, the ability to. There aren't too many organizations at this point that can tax the elasticity of Amazon, for example, AWS. And so being able to use that as a DR plan, as recoverability, talking about more of that sort of stuff, and getting organizations to really think, and sometimes I hate that it's like ransomware and stuff like that that's driving it, because we should do this stuff just because it's the right thing to do. But ransomware is a great boogeyman for driving some change, from a security perspective and from an operational perspective. And one of those changes, how do we do backups? How do we do disaster recovery? How do we do business continuity? How does a stretched vSAN cluster fit into this? Can we create availability zones on premises? Can we create that? Can we split our stuff up into the cloud as well? How do we do that? Can we store a bunch of stuff up in the cloud just for a rainy day, and then if we need it, we burst that capacity? I think the options there, especially coupled with what we're doing with hybrid cloud stuff, the HCX sorts of things, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and that's something I'm really looking forward to getting into as a security and compliance guy. This, security is not just nerd knobs about confidentiality and stuff like that. It covers integrity and availability as well, and those things are often overlooked, and I'm hoping to bring those back up here in the near future. So, we get another question. With the new ADFS integration in vCenter, is there an easy way to make it work with Power CLI?
My Power CLI is super rusty, but what I would say is, we've got a new portal actually for Power CLI.
Yeah, I thought the answer is yes. Believe it or not, Mike would know that. My predecessor doing security stuff, guy by the name of Mike Foley, really paved the way for vSphere security and compliance. He didn't disappear or anything. He's doing Kubernetes stuff now, vSphere with Tanzu, and but he would actually know that. So I believe the answer is yes, but I don't know that for sure because it's been a little while since I've messed with it. And now that I think about it, I've never actually tried it via Power CLI.
Why don't we do a tweet with that?
Yeah, you want? We can put something out.
We'll sign up someone who's not here. Chatting, Mike Foley.
I've got my notebook here. I'm making notes. I've got 3 notebooks. One is for projects, one is for meetings, and one is for stuff like this. So
Ken, to your question, while Bob figures out what he's going to find over there in the corner, but also too interesting when you think about, I find it interesting how we're trying to accommodate these newer workloads and how applications are built. Because I mean, let's face it, and this probably isn't the first time I've said this, but the infrastructure wouldn't exist if you didn't have any applications. So it's all about the applications. And the fact that you have applications now doing AI ML, you have applications that are packaged differently via containers and orchestrated so differently now. And then you have a hypervisor. And how can you make this thing that managed traditional applications accommodate for those newer next generation applications in a really efficient way? And we can tackle that both at the control plane level, but we can also improve it through things like vSAN over RDMA, using new hardware technologies to make this thing faster. And so it's the combination of that I find interesting.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. That to me is the really cool thing at VMware. I mean, I've been here forever, and I'm still here because I still love it. And it's, to me, this new phase that you're talking about is exactly what's so cool about it. It's the intersection of hardware and software and application, basically, with new innovation at all of those levels, even on the traditional side of things. So, for example, with 7 Update 2, we've got improvements to vMotion. I mean, this is not new technology, but we're adapting it to take advantage of the newest hardware. You can saturate a 100 gigabit Ethernet link with vMotion now without having to go in and click your heels 3 times and edit some code. So we're iterating the platform to take advantage of these new hardware types, including things like better integration with GPUs, better integrations with DPUs that are emerging, vTPM modules that can really tightly integrate with some of that hardware. You know, all of this stuff that we're integrating with that hardware is keeping a pace with the latest innovations. So that's kind of cool. But at the same time, we have these new application types coming along. TensorFlow, PyTorch. I've never spoken so much about this stuff in my life as I have in the last week, you know, in terms of how we put these things onto a vSphere hypervisor using stuff like containers, which is also keeping a pace. I mean, one of the update 2, we have 1.19 support, keeping N-1 support for upstream. So we're innovating and keeping pace with all of the hardware and software and application layers while building out the capabilities without requiring hybrid cloud, because not every customer is going to demand to move everything onto the cloud. But having that option and making that seamless and making it frictionless to migrate workloads back and forth, that's kind of where we are. And it's neat seeing that. I don't see anyone else that has that kind of confluence of all the different pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, bringing it together is really a strength of ours. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's so I agree, Pete. That's to me the.
No, that's good. Hey, I was just going to mention. You remember that movie Beetlejuice, where you say his name 3 times and he shows up? Well, Jatin showed up in the chat here and is answering the ADFS Power CLI question. Thank you, our friend and coworker. Keep an eye for the next Power CLI release. 12.3. Not that we'll ever have a release, because that's like features and stuff, but perhaps there will be one called 12.3 and it will solve this problem. So
he's just saying keep an eye out for it. He's not even saying it's planned. It's just
okay. That, yeah. You know, keep an eye out for the end of the world sort of thing. Yeah, you know. Sure. So cool. Thanks, well, it's slowing down here. We're losing some folks. Why don't we tie it off? And I really appreciate all of the questions. This has been the greatest live stream I've ever been part of. And, you know, that's saying something at this point. I've been part of like a handful of them, but no, this is very cool. And I really appreciate it. Pete, thank you for joining us and bringing the vSAN and storage perspective. And Ken, thanks for bringing the vSphere and generalist perspective as well.
Did you just call me old?
I did not call you old, nor did I call you fat or anything else. Yes. No, I appreciate the generalist perspective. It's, you know, it's, I think this has been a really great conversation, and especially with a lot of the questions that have been coming in. So thanks to everyone.
And however you found it to get here, whether it was the Reddit thread or through our promotion, through Twitter, through any of those things, just let us know if you want to hear more on these things, if there's something that you want to have discussed from that sort of insider
we perspective. Should do some of these, you know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Happy to. Thanks for setting it up.
Yep. Take care, folks.
Thank you, everyone.